Ready to transform your health one step at a time?
Welcome to Small Steps, Big Changes, a journey into everyday fitness with Emma
and Adrian.
Welcome to our next episode of... You were supposed to do something really exciting then.
Yeah, well,
Am I supposed to look anywhere in particular?
No, wherever you like. We're just having a chat.
Yeah, I still don't know the name of this
There's so many cameras, I'm like, I don't know where to look.
If you want to say anything serious, you can just look into that camera.
Yeah, I still don't know the name of our podcast, so I can't say anything at this point.
You're useless.
Do you know what pisses me off the most at the gym?
What?
When you walk up the stairs, have you seen what's written? Have you ever read what's written on those stairs?
Yes, don't run. It
says something like, how about we go for a run? And then it's like, only joking, let's do a real workout. Do you know, for years, I've looked at that and gone, yeah, really shouldn't have that written, should they? Like,
so our guest today is Kathryn Langan, better known as Red. And Kathryn is a runner.
Of course.
Hence the running anger.
Yeah, I've not been for a run today, that's why.
So today I'm going to try and say less, because I realised the last podcast we did, I listened back and I was saying every other word. So I'm going to do better today. Where should we start? Let's talk about ultras.
Straight in for the ultras.
Yeah.
What do you want to know? Do you want to know what I've done? Do you want to know what I think about? And what would you like to know?
Okay, let's start on your journey into running and how you ended up doing massive amount of miles in ultras and all kinds of things.
Yeah. Okay, well, my first ever 10-kilometre run that I did, which was, I think it must have been back in 2005, 2006, was the year after my dad died of a heart attack at the age of about 62.
Okay.
And I wanted to do something to raise money for British Heart Foundation. So me and John trained. I found it really, really difficult to train for a 10K, which when you know what I do now, it seems ridiculous. But we wanted to do something to kind of in memory of my dad. So that's kind of how it started. And then I just kind of, don't think I did any after that. I kind of just dipped in and out of doing different, I used to always go to the gym. I always loved the gym. I used to do loads of classes. But I just every now and then just run a 5 or a 10K. But it wasn't something that I loved doing. At school, I hated running. But I had a lot of problems with Osgood-Schlatter's disease as I was growing up, and that caused me a lot of problems because I did loads of sport at school, dancing, swimming. I've always loved it, but I just didn't like running. And then I suppose it's when we moved to France, we kind of were enjoying the food and the wine a bit too much. And then a mate challenged me. I was smoking then as well, and a mate challenged me to do a half marathon, and he said he'd do it as well. So I, frustratingly to a lot of my mates that smoked, just stopped smoking, didn't need anything, just stopped, and went, right, I'm going to train for a half marathon. And trained for a half marathon. My mate didn't do it because he didn't do any training, so he gave me more money for me to do it instead. And then it kind of just progressed from there, we should say. So I'd always stick to half marathons. The first marathon I did was Dublin, and that came about because I don't know if you've heard, in October, Ron Hill, who's a person but also a famous running brand, he ran every day. Yeah, that was the thing that he did. He ran every day, and so they used to do this thing in October where you run every day for the month of October. So I did that and then decided to continue. So I ran every day for a year. I know people that are still doing it now that have run every day for 3-4 years because, you know, you just kind of get into it. It becomes a thing. And, the minimum I'd do is a mile a day. That was like my rest day, as you could call it. And then I ran every day for a year. So at that time, I thought I was the fittest I'd ever been. And I'd enter like half marathons, and I did, a lot of obstacle races with my colleagues from work. And then I won a place in the Dublin Marathon. And I thought, oh, why not? I'm doing all this training. Surely I can do a marathon. So I trained, then was making sure I upped my miles and trained for the Dublin Marathon. And then a few of my mates' ultras had just started becoming a thing then. And a few of my mates had done a couple of ultras. And I remember, this is how long ago, we had a Skype conversation with one of my friends, video call, because that's how you did it back then. I was just said, do you think I can do an ultra? And he went, you ran every day for a year. Of course you can do an ultra. And that's kind of how it started. And that's probably 10, 15 years ago. And then someone who I'd met through a friend who we were helping renovate a friend's house in France, he just messaged me on Facebook and said, oh, I see you've signed up for an ultra. Do you want some company? I've done ultras before, and it's always nice to have someone with you for the times where you're struggling or if you're running through the night. And so he became my running husband. So Luke became my running husband. And then we ran 1 or 2 ultras a year together for about 4 years. Couldn't talk my husband into doing them. He just thought I was mad. And then I suppose it's kind of expanded from there. And then just as I've got more and more involved, for me, I'm not worried about how fast I go, my times at the end getting PBs. The challenge for me is as much of the mental challenge as it is the physical challenge, because I try and now enter races that have maybe got a stupid amount of elevation. Or when I did my 100-mile race 2 years ago, that's when I was at my fittest. I've never trained so hard for a race in my life, but living on my own, cramped all my clients into 3 days so that I could train really blooming hard. And I became a bit of a hermit. My mates complained they never saw me, but I was either working, training, or eating or sleeping, and it was just took over my life. But I trained like 5 to 6 days a week, and that was 3 days weight training, 5-6 days running as well. So, but I got the result I wanted. I had a fantastic day where people were just crashing and burning around me because it was a really hot day. It was 36 degrees and people just couldn't manage themselves in the heat. But I had an amazing coach, Debbie Martin Consani, who's very famous in the ultra world, who'd done Badwater, which is in the desert. So she phoned me the week before and said, it's going to be really hot. This is what your crew need to do. Mm-hmm. And my crew were just amazing. You can't do big races without a supportive crew. Not at all. And that's what gets me through my races, and that and the training. So, yeah.
For people who don't know, obviously you said 100 miles was one of the ultras. Mm-hmm. What's the general, does it vary race to race?
Yeah, so I think most people's first ultras is 50k. So that's 32 miles. That's kind of the next step after a marathon, because an ultra is anything over a marathon distance is classed as an ultra. So you could do a 28-mile race and that be classed as an ultra because it's more than a marathon, which is 26.2. So yeah, so the general thing is, someone says I'm doing an ultra, often it's 50k. But then there's a lot of 100k ones out there, and then there's 100 miles, 200 miles, and then the spine race, which is the most difficult in the UK, I think is, I'll probably get this wrong, it's something like 468 miles. And my coach has won it. Yeah. Wow. Hence why I chose her.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and won the race that I did. So
460 miles.
It's something like that. Yeah, I'm sure it's 468 or something. It's the whole of the Pennine Way. So it starts in Edale and you finish in Scotland.
Wow.
Yeah. So, they do it in January.
Okay, so the weather's...
So last year, it was all that snow. You couldn't see Jacob's Ladder. Yeah. If you've been up Jacob's Ladder, you couldn't see it because of the snow. Yeah. They do a summer version as well, but it's never appealed to me. I will put that out there. I will never do the spine race. Just because a couple of people have asked me,
Sure.
I'm positive.
I think you'll be taught around.
I don't think I will.
So, as you know, we're not really
No.
runners.
No.
I don't mind running. If I go on holiday, I quite like going out and getting to know the area by just going for a little, couple of miles.
Yeah.
I do not. I do not like running. I'm not a cardio person. We do not mix.
It doesn't suit everyone, and I get that, but it didn't suit me when I was younger. But I was dancing, playing badminton, table tennis, swimming. I did loads and loads of different sport that needed cardio. But when it came to we've got to go do cross country, I was like, no. I was always at the back, always moaning, just didn't like it.
That's the irony about me though. Of when I was at school, my thing was running.
Really?
I did cross country. On sports days, I was always put in like the sprinting races. Like running was just that is what I did at school as a kid. But then as I've got older, I just don't have the lung capacity. Like my stamina is 0.
Yeah.
It's just not there.
I think one of your things that you struggle with is you struggle on treadmills.
Yes.
Oh.
I get vertigo.
Oh, really?
I could be on. So I don't know if it's like having noise cancelling headphones on or what it is, but like the big treadmills like we have in the gym, I'm not even, I wish I were exaggerating. 2 minutes is like my maximum before I then kind of go, ooh, I feel a bit queasy.
Really?
I can't do this. But then we've bought a walking pad. So obviously it's a lot thinner, a lot smaller. I walked for an hour on that a few weeks ago, and I obviously felt weird afterwards, but I was like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
This is all right.
No, it's funny because, I always laugh and say, oh, I'm going to go do a treadmill run. They have their benefits, definitely. So if you're trying to stick at a pace when you're training, it's fantastic because you can just set it at that pace and you have to stay at it and you have to push yourself. It's obviously good that you can have the elevation. They always say on a treadmill you should move the elevation because when you're walking outside it's not totally flat and that can, and it can hurt your back. So I always say, change the elevation a little bit. But as for vertigo, I've not heard that before, but it could be your headphones or maybe just trying to focus on the traffic. They're never in nice places, are the treadmills, we look at a brick wall at the gym. But I do use it. In France, I did a lot of my long runs on treadmills because it was so hot. Because in summer, when we lived in the Alps, it could get to 40 degrees. And I couldn't run. When I was training for a marathon, there's no way I could have run. So I do remember one time being on a treadmill in the gym in France for 2 hours. So I was doing a half marathon. And they were celebrating like 1 year of the gym, and all these people kept coming up to me and trying to hand me like glasses of wine and beer and food, and I'm like, I'm running. So I was like, I'm just no, and they're like, do you not want? So I was like, maybe when I've finished, but I just really want to get my half marathon done. It was just hilarious.
Saucisson.
Yeah, petit saucisson. It was like, no, you're okay. No, I don't want that. But yeah, it was hilarious. I was just like, oh my God, leave me be. But yeah, and I do. It's hard work doing that length of time on a treadmill. I much prefer to be outside. And I often think that I'll get to the gym when it's really warm outside and all the treadmills are full, and I just think, just go outside and enjoy it. But that's often people that want to go at a certain pace and don't know how to pace themselves in the heat. If I have clients that are doing races, and they'll always have a name. Well, generally, if they're doing a road race, they have a time that they want to do. And I always say that, the one factor you can't control is the weather. And I say, you need to slow down your pace. If it's hot, forget the PBs, just enjoy the moment and look after yourself a bit more. And that's, we were talking about it last weekend. I was crewing a friend for an ultra last weekend. And she was struggling a little bit, and my mate said to me, how did you cope doing 100 miles? Did people talk to you? And I said, people were chatting to me a bit, and I'm going to get shot for this, but men were just moaning at me about the heat and racing off, and then I'd catch up to them, and then, oh God, it's just, and I'd be like, slow down. slow down. You know, I got to checkpoints and there was guys collapsed all over the place from the heat. And I'm like wondering, and my mate's like, "You all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm cool." You know, and they were putting ice cubes in my buff, wrapping it around my neck, ice cubes under my hat. You know, there's a picture of me where one of them's massaging my legs with sun cream, someone else is feeding me something, and we were just on it, and I just potter off, and I didn't hit a wall at all that day. And it is, there's a lot of evidence around that women pace themselves better in hot weather than men. And I don't know why.
I think going back to sort of what I know better, which is weight training, men do often come with a bit of an ego.
You think that's what it is?
To an extent. If I say to someone who's come in for their first ever session with me, and I'm trying to explain to them why you should do things with good form and do things properly rather than heavily.
Yeah.
You put them on a machine and I'll put it at a set amount that I think will be relevant.
Yeah.
I will demonstrate the movement. I'll jump off the machine. They'll jump on and down the stack it goes.
Too light. It's too light. Yeah.
And struggling away. And it's, yeah, I think it is
an ego thing.
I've seen, you know, women do it as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, potentially.
I think it could be. I mean, it was a Centurion race, and one of the women that was volunteering for them and working for them, we kind of got through a checkpoint and she's spraying cold water in my face, which was lovely. And she just said in my ear, "There'll be more males that pull out today than females because of the heat." And it was true. There was. I mean, I don't think there was that many. I can't remember the numbers of how many started, but it was the biggest pullout in a race they've ever had. And they put it down to the heat. Even some of the pro runners at the front. And I've listened to the podcast, and she said, I didn't slow my pace down for the weather, and she suffered with heat exhaustion. So it just shows you that you can train as hard as you want, but the uncontrollables, which are the weather, you have to learn how to deal with each thing, you know, individual. And it is a science. You know, one of my clients has just signed up to his first. Well, I might have talked him into it. His first laps race. So it's a 6-hour endurance race, and it's about 5k loops, and you do as many as you like. So it's a really good way of pushing yourself to that next level, but knowing you've only got to go 5k rather than signing up for an ultra and then wanting to pull out after 30k. So you just do 5k loops, and you can stop after each loop. You can have a snooze if you want to. You can get your food. You've got time to go to the toilet, and then you go back out and do another loop, and you just do as many as you want in 6 hours. Okay. And I just said it's a really good way of practicing your nutrition, seeing what gels work, you know, running on different kind of terrain. I think it's at Sherwood Pines, and just pushing yourself that little bit further and seeing how your body responds to it. And it's a great way of really getting that nutrition right.
Do you, when you're training, how strict are you with your diet?
When I did my 100-mile race, I was really strict, really, really strict. Because it was an expensive race to enter. It was a big challenge. You have to send proof that you've done races, not of that distance, but done races and finished in a certain time, so that you can prove that you can hit the cutoffs. And I just thought, when you spend that much money on it, you know, at the time John's working away, I'm on my own at home, we don't have a family, but I was buying the meal prep meals that you can get, just to kind of, I suppose, take away the temptation of eating something I shouldn't eat, because I just had my meals. I did my own breakfast, but I'd have 2 of these meals a day and then healthy snacks in between. And I can be super focused when I've got something to aim for. I'm super, super focused. But don't get me wrong, I'm no angel when I'm not doing a race. But when I'm in a race, I was just making sure I was hitting my protein goals, just eating clean, eating healthy. You know, I didn't drink that much. I don't drink that much these days anyway, but I might have, like, if I went out with mates, I'd have one drink, maybe one beer or one glass of wine, but I'm quite good at, I'll just have an expensive, nice glass of wine, but I'll just have one. So I'm treating myself by having a really nice glass of wine rather than restricting myself completely and then thinking, oh, I'll just have a cheap glass of wine. And then I'd get cross with myself.
Yeah.
So, I was really, really strict on my nutrition and your sleep as well. I mean, I tend to start at 6 in the gym, but I've got no problem going to bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. But that's why it took over my life. That's why no one saw me.
Yeah.
But,
it's important for everything, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sleep is,
Yeah.
whether you're training for something or not, it's getting a good 7-8 hours
Yeah.
is.
That's like the biggest thing, isn't it? You can forget everything else if you're not getting any good sleep in, then there's no point.
I've got at least 2 clients who are shift workers. And making progress when you do shift work is so difficult.
It's hard work, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they're always exhausted. Always. I've had people that do shifts and every time, they'd rock up and you could tell that they're absolutely not with it. They can't concentrate on what you're doing and what you're showing them. They make mistakes and they just can't get that balance, can they, with the sleep?
Yeah. Want you to talk a little bit about how you were thinking of starting to do a little run?
Despite me despising running, I have considered, I've still got time to back out, but doing a 5K next year of don't do running full stop. I'm not going to go, oh yeah, I've got plenty of time to train. Let's just do a 10K straight off the bat. Being realistic. Try it a 5K. See how that goes. Because I know that we've just had the Red Brick 10K.
10K, yeah.
And obviously they do a 5K version as well. Been debating doing that.
So that's what, April next year?
Yeah. Of
Or
doing
March,
that.
April,
So I've got plenty of time to train for it and kind of figure it out. So from a perspective of somebody who does not do any cardio, obviously, like you've got like your couch to 5Ks and stuff like that. What would you say, like if I then started training with you, what would you tell me to do?
Running wise or gym wise?
So generally, to start training for doing a 5K.
Well, the couch to 5K programs are brilliant. Yeah, you can't go wrong with them. But for someone that's admitted you don't particularly enjoy running, you might be better joining around Derbyshire, especially because it's who I work for. There's Jog Derbyshire, and they're jogging groups rather than running groups. Don't get me wrong, within them, there's really good runners and they do have faster runners as well. But they, throughout the year, do couch to 5K programs. So someone else is telling you what to do, but you've got other people around you to chat to. So some people will say, I don't want to run with anyone else. I just want to run on my own. And that's fine. And the couch to 5K is great because there's nothing, I could write you a couch to 5K program, but it's probably the only stage in a running journey I'd say you can go with a generic plan for the running side. But then obviously for the weight training side, you'd have to do your full movement assessment, see where your strengths and weaknesses are. Unilateral training is the best type of training. So that's where you're working one leg at a time or one arm at a time, because when you're running, you're on one leg. Yeah, working on your balance, your ankles, your shins and everything, because a lot of people that start running get shin splints. That's really, really common. That can be caused by lots of different things. Often it's the shoes you're wearing. So I'd say everyone says running's free because you do it outside, but you need a good pair of trainers. Yeah, because the amount of people that get shin splints when they start is unbelievable. So it's knowing how to strengthen, the muscles around your shins, the different types of exercises you need to do on your tibialis and all of that. It's in your ankles because they're taking it all really. But unilateral, everyone knows, they all joke about it, my runners, when they come to me, that I'll always start with unilateral training because you can also see if one side's stronger than the other, which most of us it is. And then you know what you're working with and then you can build up from there. But what a lot of runners worry about is they think if they lift heavy, it will impact their performance. And I've had a number of runners come to me and start training with me, and they're scared of lifting heavy. And I'm like, I'll get big, I'll get slower, and I have to say, look at me, look at me. I lift really heavy weights, and that makes me faster. It makes me stronger. It pushes you up those hills. That's what you need. You need the heavy weights, and it's kind of this myth that if I lift heavy, I'm going to get bigger and I'm going to get slower when I run. And it's like, no, actually, you're not. You're going to get stronger when you run, and you're going to recover better after the runs because you're strong enough to do it.
Sounds good.
The main difference I think people might be unaware of is strength training and what would be more hypertrophy training, going over 8-ish reps, between going 3 to 5 reps for strength, which is probably more what you're talking about, lifting maximally.
Yeah. When I'm in the peak of my training, I generally don't do more than 8 reps of anything, but it'll be 8 reps heavy.
Yeah.
And then obviously in my taper weeks before I race, I normally strip all the weights out completely, and it's all body weight stuff.
So generally with strength training, you can obviously, the stronger you get, the more muscular you're going to get, but that doesn't necessarily transition into size, does it?
No.
And that's quite a lot down to nutrition as well as the style of training.
Yeah.
I guess people don't realize that unless you eat an absolute ton of food, the chances of putting on a large amount of muscle are minimal. You have to be on so many calories, and especially if you're running as well.
Yeah.
Training and running, you're constantly burning calories.
Yeah, you're constantly burning. You're constantly hungry. You know, it's quite interesting because we always say, a female doesn't need as many calories as a male, and blah blah blah. Most of the time, I need more food than my husband because I train more than him. But I mean, I'm sure you've said it day in, day out, like I have, that you get people, I suppose, especially women, that come to you and start training, and they're worried they're going to get big if they lift heavy weights. And I'm like, you're only going to get big if you eat loads of calories. And it is this thing that people kind of need to get that out of their head. It's like people think that cardio is the only thing that burns fat, and it's like, no, weight training burns fat. You hear it all the time, don't you? And it's just what we were led to believe when we were younger, and that's what they used to say, wasn't it, that cardio was the best exercise you could do, but actually now it's a mixture of the two.
I think people's understanding of that is improving, probably due to social media information and stuff like that, although that varies in quality.
It does. You can always tell what the new trend is because you see people doing it at the gym.
Yeah, so true. See some weird stuff in the gym.
Walking sideways up a stair mill, or kicking the legs out
Kicking
behind
legs out,
them as they do it. Yeah. Or going on a treadmill. Can I just put this to right? Going on a treadmill on an incline and holding on and leaning back does not work, because with the leaning back, you're just making yourself flat again.
Yeah. So I have someone who he's really wants to put an effort in, and he's doing well. But I came in the other day and he had exactly that. He had the treadmill it might as well have been pointing at the roof, and he's hanging on for dear life. And I said to him, "Take your hands off," and he went, "No."
Yeah.
I said, "You're not walking naturally."
No.
I said, "There's 2 points to what you're doing here. Yes, you're wanting to lose body fat, but at the same time, walking is a natural reset for your body. And unless you're walking naturally exactly how you walk, you're not getting that benefit at all. So drop it down.
Yeah.
Take your hands off."
You use your arms when you walk.
There's so many benefits of walking.
Yeah.
It balances your hips. It can correct so many things.
It does. And getting your steps in, it is really important. I've lost count the amount of times I've said to clients, just go out for a walk in your lunch break just for half an hour. Oh no, I don't like walking, don't like the hot weather, don't like the cold weather, don't like this, don't like. And I just say, it'll really help. And then, with one client in particular, she did start doing it and she did lose weight, and she was like, oh my God. And I was like, yeah. And then she'd get a bit obsessed with doing 10,000 steps a day, but hey, there's worse things to be obsessed about, isn't there?
Yeah.
And it worked. And I was like, this, you just need to move.
If you're working in an office all day, it can clear that mental fog as well.
Yeah.
You can feel so much better in the afternoon.
And God forbid a PT would actually tell you something that is going to help.
I know.
Like, because we know nothing about what we're saying.
Oh, no.
I learned something really interesting about cognitive decline as you get older. So when you walk, because your eyes do that all the time, because your eyes have to keep constantly balancing what you're seeing and feeding that information back to your brain, because you're going like this, it has to level out what you're seeing.
Yeah.
And if you don't do regular movement where your brain has to process that, it leads to real sharp cognitive decline as you get older.
No, I didn't know that.
So that can have a knock-on effect of all kinds of things with balance.
Yeah.
So why people have falls a lot when they get older, because that's just, it's gone because they haven't done enough movement before getting to that age. So I think it's really amazing.
That's really interesting, yeah. So I should live till I'm really old.
You
then.
should be, yeah. Probably 200, I should imagine.
200, you reckon?
Yeah. Easily.
200. Well, you already think I'm 60, don't you? So. I always love a birthday when Adrian's around. Always adds a good few years on top of what I actually am.
Yeah.
He does that to me.
Does he?
I mean, the moment I turned 26, 27, it was like, that's it, you're old now. It's like you're past middle age, you're not 25 anymore.
You're about the oldest person I know.
That is true. Mentally, yes.
You sit there doing your knitting and
I do like my recliner sofa, my crochet, my knitting.
you're not
my cup of
about
tea on
going
the
out,
side. No.
drinking or anything like that. You are,
I have hit 90
yeah,
at 28.
very early, yeah.
I'm the opposite then.
Yeah. No, I love my old lady life.
I'm 48 and I can't stand sitting at home. I want to be out running in the hills and falling over in mud.
Yeah.
Never going to grow out of it, I don't think.
What's next?
Well, this year's been a strange year. I went over to Gran Canaria to do Trans Gran Canaria in February. I didn't do the full distance. I was doing I was doing the 21 kilometre distance, but it was 1,400 metres of climbing, which was all in the first half, which I used poles because poles are fantastic. They take the pressure off your legs and it means that you use your arms more. So your legs get a bit of a break when you're using your poles. It's a real good way of doing ultras. So me and John did it with my husband. Me and John did the first half together. And then I got very excited as we came to a downhill running bit. Because I'm stronger downhill and on the flats. And I stood on a rock that went one way and my ankle went the other. So I've had quite bad ligament damage on my ankle since February. So I think I'm now 14 weeks out. I had 6 weeks of no running. I had a race I wanted to do in Lugano in Switzerland, where my husband lives, beginning of June, but I hadn't signed up for it yet. It was similar kind of terrain. It was the same distance, the same kind of climbs, but it had a really good cut-off because you could walk it. And my physio said, my physio was always very good. Whenever I went to see him, it'd always be, when's your next race or what's your next aim? I mean, I haven't had many running injuries at all. I've been really lucky considering I've got pathetically skinny ankles. Yeah, something we have in common. And then, of course, with John's been made redundant, I'm moving abroad. We're going to go travelling for a bit and then going to end up with not quite sure where. I've not really signed up to anything because I didn't know what country I was going to be in.
Yep.
So, and then someone mentioned it to me the other day and said, oh, what ultras have you got this year? And when I sat and thought about it, I realised it's the first time in 10 years that I've not got an ultra booked in. Which is a really weird feeling when that's like my love. But I think because so much has kind of changed recently and And honestly, I haven't had the time or a little bit of the inclination to train for it. I'm doing long runs. I've done a 17-mile run and I'm doing 20 miles this weekend. So I am getting back up to my fitness. I'm not as quick as I was. And I tend to take my poles and I still have to walk some hills. But I'm getting back there because I've always said I want to be fit enough that a mate can phone me and say, do you fancy a long run this weekend? And that's always been kind of the level I've wanted to be at. So I happily said I'll go and do a 20-mile run at the weekend because I know we're taking it steady. So even though it'll take a bit more out of me than it used to, I'm happy that I'm back at that level, that I can still go out and have fun with my friends because luckily I've got a big circle of ultra runners in my community. So there's always someone up for going out for a bit of an adventure at the weekend, which is what it is. We're not bothered about pace.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I've been doing. I've wrecked a few races that are coming up that I'm not going to be able to do. So I've just gone and done them with my friends instead, just to see what the route's like. But as for races, I don't know. My plan is when we go traveling, we want to do lots of adventure hiking. That's how I have to sell it to the husband. So it's multi-day events.
Right.
It's not an event, it's a multi-day, and it is hiking through the mountains and you go and stay up in the mountains and stuff. So we really, really want to do something like that, but we don't know. It's, you know what it's like at the moment. It's everything's got a big question mark over it, but my intention is, because my clients are all going online, is that I'll have more time to train and hopefully I'll be living in the mountains somewhere. So I'm going to focus on my mountain running and then hopefully be able to come back and do some bigger races again next year, maybe.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's wrap up and just briefly cover injuries, because there's probably quite a lot of myths around running.
Running doesn't damage your knees.
Yeah, that's probably the
main one.
The thing to touch on, yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have that mindset, don't they?
Yeah. What damages your knees is you've not done the strength training to protect the muscles around them. It's not the actual impact of running. In fact, road running is worse for you than trail running. Trail running's harder when you first start, but it actually uses more muscles and, you know, and it works your proprioception, which is, you know, just that micro movement with like when you stood on your foot. You know, if you're doing it on a road, it's just the same all the time. But when you're doing it on uneven trails, you're constantly working the muscles and the ligaments all around your ankles. But there's so many myths around running. When I lived in France, people used to say to me, oh, you'll damage your knees, all that running that you're doing. And I was like, oh, no.
Impact's important though, isn't it?
Yeah.
For your bones.
Yeah.
You need that impact to...
And keeping moving. You know, I had 6 weeks where I didn't run at all. I could start doing little walks, but I could only do like walk for 20 minutes or something. And I felt so much better after moving than just being sat still. And, you know, we all must have noticed it when you go on holiday and you're not as active as you are. You might sit down more, you might drink a bit more or whatever. And you feel so sluggish afterwards. But just going for a gentle walk and just keeping moving, it just keeps everything working, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we can really comment on not moving when you're on holiday. I think we move more when we go away. I think we average at like 25,000 steps a day when we're on holiday.
We like you were saying, you like to go out for a run when you're on holiday. It's probably the main time you do it. Well, that's what we do.
Yeah.
We, you know, when we were in Cyprus last year, they were laughing at us in the hotel because we'd disappear off in the morning with our running stuff, with our water bladders. And they're like, where are you going? I said, oh, we're just going to you're running to the next town, but that's 10 kilometres away. And, you know, me and John are like, yeah. Because you see things differently to what you do on a bus or sat in a car. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I did want to hire a quad bike, but John said no. But it's the best way to discover a place. But no, I think running injuries, I think probably the most common running injury with runners is ankles and calves quite often. But that's why stretching is so good. I have when I'm in the peak of a race, I have a massage every 4 to 6 weeks. And I might even have them once a fortnight when I'm getting really, really close, just to keep everything moving. Yeah. And it's good to get in with someone and go to the same person because they really know your body and they know where you have the issues. And I love working alongside people. You know, I've got a physio I work alongside. I've got a massage person I work alongside. And I just look after myself. I look after every little part of it. And that is why I don't get injured much. This injury on my ankle, it couldn't be helped. I had an argument with a rock. It wasn't through lack of training. It wasn't through lack of strength training. The reason it didn't break is because of all this training that I do. And my physio said to me, I'll try and put it so I don't swear. He said, you proper screwed up your ankle. And when you sent me the videos from your holiday, there's no way on earth I thought you'd be running these distances now, because I did what he told me to.
Yeah.
I rested. I stopped for 6 weeks. I did all my exercises that he gave me alongside strength stuff that I knew would work with it, and we worked together to do it. And it'll always say we've always worked together on stuff. And I think it's really, really important to use the knowledge of the people around you and not just think you know best.
Yeah.
You know, even as a PT, there's people that know more than me. And, you know, and if you have clients and you can't quite work out a problem, I'll often send them to my physio and say, I can't quite work out what this is. Can you have a look? And he'll have a look and he'll come back and then we work together on it. But that's how I've stayed injury free. And that's how I've managed to do an ultra, sometimes 2 or 3 a year for the past 10 years.
Red, thank you very much.
You're welcome, my dear.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
I hope that was good and you learned lots from that. And thanks for joining us.